Hello, Perform 360 8-week challenges. It's Anne from iPerformance Nutrition, and in this recording we will be exploring the Hunger Game. So this is a really simple little task to do, a pretty fun one actually, but it's going to help you connect mindfully with eating. And we have discussed this in previous recordings where it's really important, and in fact it's the first thing about your simple 6 habits that we want to be focusing on and doing a lot of the time. So this is just a really quick and easy way for you to get in touch with your hunger, to actually start becoming a bit more intuitive about what you need from a food perspective. And it really brings you to that conscious eating that we really want you guys to be looking for and being present with every single time you eat. So basically, you want to pick 1 or 2 days or maybe a week at best if you can, but we all know everybody's busy. So when this sort of comes to mind, I really want you to think about hopefully just starting with 1 day, and at every meal in that 1 day this week, I want you to do it this week, I want you to ask yourself, am I hungry? So this could normally just be you just going into your normal habits day to day. You know, say for instance, you get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and you always have breakfast by 6:30 a.m. And that's totally fine. I don't want to change your routine, but what I want you to be aware of and conscious of is just asking yourself the question, every time that you go down and sit down to eat something, am I hungry? So if you answer that question and you say yes, then you follow that yes line all the way down. So it will prompt you to ask you a few other things about the answer that you've just given. So the first question then, after you've asked yourself, am I hungry? The answer to that is, if it is yes, then you will go through and say, is my tummy rumbling? Is my energy dipping? Or if I'm actually feeling what we term hangry. So we've gotten to the point where we're so hungry that we are literally angry, and we are looking for anything to have in sight. So ask yourself that. Now, if you've said yes to that, then you can follow down that column and then we start eating. So we want to be eating slowly. We want to be stopping after each bite. So remembering to chew your food completely and swallow it before you take the next mouthful. And then after the end of eating whatever is on your plate, I want you to go check in with yourself, and especially what you are starting to feel from a stomach sensation. So remember, we asked ourselves at the top, was our stomach rumbling? Well, has that stopped now? Was our energy dipping? Well, do you feel your energy possibly not increasing because it takes a bit of time for food to get digested, released, and absorbed? But are you not ravenous? So you should be answering yes to these questions. But it's really important, like I said, that we check in with our body, because that's going to be really good for you to get an understanding of going, okay, there's a physical sensation that I'm being aware of here now when I'm eating, not just what I have in my mouth and what I'm tasting. It goes beyond that. And then you can go through and ask yourself the question, okay, well, I've finished, and am I still hungry? And so if the answer to that is yes, then I would say you can continue to eat. So then you would be wanting to take another bite, and then of course doing the whole process again in a really mindful situation and scenario. So if you asked yourself at the mealtime if you were hungry and the answer was no, then hold off until you start to feel some sort of physical sensation. So you would follow the no column all the way down. So when you stop and check in with yourself, notice what that actually feels like. So the sheer effect of going, you know what, I've made a decision and I've stopped and I haven't eaten. Take a moment there to actually just reconnect with your thoughts. What actually came up? If you've got a pen and paper, or if you've whipped your phone out, write it in your notes. It's really important that we start recognizing and being aware of the thoughts that go through our heads, because often what I find with food is that we create these really ingrained behaviors and we end up doing things that food-wise we don't even know why we do, but we find ourselves falling back to these sort of habits every single time. And every time we kick ourselves, we go, oh, why do we do that? Oh, and there's a guilt association. You get disappointed with yourself every time you do it. And you say, next time I'm not going to do it. But what we're doing is we're just beating ourselves up over it. We're not actually really reconnecting and thinking, well, what are the ingrained thoughts that actually happen to lead us to that moment? And often you can link a thought with an emotion. And so what happens with repetitive thoughts is that they create emotions and they create feelings within us. And then we create behaviors, or we do actions that are sometimes obviously related to food. And it might not always be food, but in the game that I'm in, we're playing the Hunger Games, so we're talking about food. So just recognizing those thoughts is all I want you guys to do. And what is that sensation? So sometimes the thoughts might not be nice, but we need to recognize that it's okay to sit with those just for a moment. And just to really go, all right, I'm just tapping in. If I'm sitting with those thoughts and I'm not feeling great, then what does that actually mean to me? Or if I'm having great thoughts, then how am I feeling physically? And you'll start to notice things like your posture, okay? Or even just pain or tension in some areas. Say, for instance, you are stressed about work, or you've got a big high workload, and all of a sudden you can start to notice that your shoulders are slowly creeping up towards your ears, okay? And you have a more hunched position and posture. So remembering at any one point in time, when you check in with your thoughts, you can start to see what emotion your body's going through, and you can start to recognize and notice the physical signs and symptoms of what your body is telling you. Okay, so at that moment in time, that's all I want you to do, to write down that experience for yourself. And like I said, it needs to be easy, quick, and convenient. So using your notes in your phone, or even just jotting it down on a piece of paper with a pen right next to you. So after which you can go back to the am I hungry question. And if the answer is you're not actually quite sure, then we follow the middle column. So that's actually okay. This is the whole point. We really want you guys to get comfortable and recognize, well, might not be really physically hungry, so I'm not getting those physical cues. My tummy's not rumbling, but maybe I'm thinking about food because everyone else in my workspace has gone out to lunch. Okay, so just pause for a moment and just notice, just see what you notice in terms of your physical cues, but also what else is happening around you that you can't really define or answer that question right now. So basically, there's a couple of different deviates in here. So if you are following the line of the column of yes, so you recognize that you were actually hungry. If you then got to the point and said, okay, I'm not sure how to think about it. Yes, okay. And this also could be a logistical move from my experience. We don't often always get every moment of every day to eat as well. So it might just be sheer coincidence that you need to get this meal in because you've got a work meeting coming up, but then you also plan to train that day. So you weren't maybe accounting for that, so you have to eat. And that's totally fine to do because you know that if you left it any longer, you'd probably be getting to the hangry stage. So I just want you to think about the reasons and the decisions why you're choosing to eat. And that's all part of the whole process. So if we followed that yes line down all the way down again, and if at one point you started to consume food, you checked in with your body, you noticed that your stomach sensations were quite fine, you've eaten slowly, you were stopping at every bite, and you noticed that you weren't hungry anymore, then you could go back up to the no column and then check in with yourself. Notice what it's like to stop. And you could look down and that might be food left on your plate. Well, how do you feel about that? What goes through your head at that moment in time? What thoughts are associated with that? Write that down. If you're getting through and you're halfway through your plate and you're asking yourself that same question and then you go, oh, well, I'm not really sure if I'm hungry or not, then go back to the not sure column. It's okay to feel like this too. Go back to your physical cues, try and learn from them. Maybe they might have subsided a little bit, but maybe you've still got a little bit of an appetite to eat a little bit more. Or maybe you need to eat more and you've been told to eat more because you know that your performance is being, substandard lately. So you are trying to improve that, and that's okay too. And then, of course, we can follow that line down again and go back through the whole process again. So this essentially, like I said, guys, is just a little bit of fun, but I wanted to walk you through and talk you through the process because I think it's a really, really important task to do. If, like I said, you've got maybe minimum one day where you can really focus on doing this, or you can do it for the whole week, that would be great because what you'll learn about yourself and your thought patterns will really bring you to becoming a really conscious eater. And all we want to remember, what we're trying to create here is going back to making sure that we're eating eating mindfully. And that to me is the key to most of the time when we actually sit and consume food. After a while, we tend to go a little bit more beyond that. And so for the athletes, if you're taking it up a notch and you've done the hunger game a few times, you can go back to doing it. But now you're wanting to learn why it is that you're choosing certain types of foods. And so now you're making decisions from a food perspective that are actually based not just on hunger and a physical need, they're based on nutritional value. So you start to connect with more reasons to eat wonderful, good, nourishing food. And that to me is total empowerment. When I give you guys a reason to want to do something when it comes to food and cooking, the more positives or the more pluses you can attribute to that, the more likely that you'll be compliant and you'll seek to do that really good behavior time and time again. So essentially that's what I wanted to go through with the hunger game. Now, in relation to that, I am also going to touch, while I've got you, on your nutrition adherence chart, because this is a part of recording as well. So we're talking about food and we're talking about recording things. Now, this really wanted to be something that was really easy and simple to do. I wanted to do away with the numbers. You guys know I don't like numbers. We don't eat numbers. We eat real food. And now we're becoming more intuitive about how we're eating that food, and we're wanting to learn why we're eating that food. But always, I think from a self-reflection perspective, it's important to record, because this just brings us back to awareness. So we generally are so busy during the day, we make millions of decisions every single day. And when it comes to nutrition, when we think about recording, like food records, oh my God, my clients hate this. And so I only ever make them do it for a short period of time, but it's really only for their benefit. It's not for mine. It's for them to actually go, oh, all right, I didn't realize that was happening. And so once again, we're bringing that consciousness, that presence back into the reasons why we're eating. And what we are actually doing is then at the end of the week, we're reflecting, or at the end of the day, or at the end of the meal, if you so wanted to, we're reflecting on the number of times that we are following those simple 6 or those plate guides and looking at our compliance level. So when we start to not get the results that we want, we have a blueprint to go back on and say, okay, well, this is what I have been doing. I can see now possibly why I might not be achieving the goal or the intent that I set out to. And so it makes it really easy from an information data perspective for us to be able to revise that, reflect on it. And this is what you guys can do. You can be your own sports dietitian. We're just an extra set of eyes, but you guys know yourself best. And if you're doing and recording this really well, then you'll have a whole stack of data that you can use to implement changes moving forward. And what you need to do with that is to then check that list off against what we've suggested with the simple 6 and your plate guides and your portions. And then you can differentiate between what you might not be doing so great, but also you can give yourself a massive high five to say, well, yeah, I'm actually doing a lot of things really, really good. So this is what I want you guys to do. Take that empowerment, take that ownership. So, and particularly for the athletes out there, the guys doing the athletic challenge, you can even take this another level over. So for the fundamentals, I'll basically just walk you through this tick and flick sheet. So I want you guys to print this out. You can print as many out of these as possible. This is only 2 weeks worth. So I tend to feel that after 2 weeks, you guys have pretty much got yourself sorted. But if you are wanting to do this for the full 8 weeks, you just print out another 4 more copies. So you've got your adherence charts throughout the course of that time. So you can always hand this into your coach for extra accountability. But remember, you know, we don't need teachers to say, good job, high five, good gold star. You can actually do this for yourself. And I would encourage you to do that for yourself too. So if we're looking at the fundamentals, we're looking at achieving 4 of those either daily nourishment or post-training performance plates every single day. So there are the opportunity there for 4 meals within that. The athletes have the option to increase that as they are training more and we expect more of their output. Then they have the opportunity to do the 5 meals per day, and that's what we suggest. There is also a meal 6 as a meal 6 column, because some of us might actually eat past our last meal, and that's okay. We just want you to be able to recognize that and just see what it is, the patterns that you are doing when it comes to your food behaviors. So day 1, all we really want you to do is, if you hit the right proportion of the right plate, you just put a tick in there. So that's entirely what you do. That's as easy as that. So meal 1 on day 1, what did I eat? It was a post-training meal, so I went back, I looked at my post-training plate, I had that starchy carbohydrate in there, I had a piece of fruit before I trained, I got my protein in, and I got my, protein, what's a checklist? Go back to the Simple Six. So I've got my protein in there, I've got my fruit that I had beforehand. I didn't get veggies in that, so, I could make up for that, but I did get fruit in there, so Ange said that's okay because that's a fiber content. And I definitely hit my fats as well. So slightly less on fats because it was post-training, but I pretty much covered that meal. So all you need to do there, instead of writing everything down in exact portions, is if you did it, then tick it. Simple and easy. I mean, you guys have your time pool, right? So I'd rather that you spend all the time that you have preparing your meals, getting organized, do your food shopping, do your food prep, and all you got to do is eat it. So all you need to do from a recording perspective is just a tick it, right? So then you go through, and each of those meals, like I said, if you've done it correctly, you tick that box. If you've missed a meal, then we want you to put a cross in there. So say, for instance, you got busy at work, something landed on your desk, and you didn't happen to have meal 2 or 3 for that matter, and you ended up eating your lunch at meal 4. Totally fine, just put an X on that time frame where you would have ordinarily had that meal. Now, each time you eat a non-compliant meal, so each time it's not from the what we're trying to achieve with the Simple Six and your portion plate. So say, for instance, you've been invited out, you've gone to a wedding and you had no control over that food. That's totally okay. We understand that lifestyle this is why we're doing this, guys. So we can afford to have situations like this where we might be eating foods that aren't prepared by us. Totally fine. So if that's the case and it's a non-compliant meal, so something that's pretty much completely different to what you normally do day to day, or it's way bigger in portions and completely different in the amounts and the macronutrients that we're trying to achieve, then I would put an asterisk in the box where you would have had that meal. So that's really it. So it's a tick if you've done it, an X or a cross if you've missed it, but a non-compliant meal, so one that's not on track at all, is an asterisk. And then, of course, if a meal isn't applicable, you can just put an NA in the appropriate box as well. So that just might happen to, you might be in a situation where you just go, well, I just didn't get that in and I'm not going for meal 6, say, for instance, and I'm just happy and comfortable eating 4 meals a day. So that's fine. Meal 5 is an NA, meal 6 is an NA as well. Okay, so we've given you a bit of an example there down below, and honestly, guys, like I said, it should be really quick, really simple, really easy, and we want you to fail about 10% of the time. In fact, we expect that. It's built in your meal plan, and it's actually great for fat loss. So don't stress about that, but remembering the balance. So if we go off the plan 10% of the time, you need to think about, okay, well, how many times during the week am I looking at that? If I have 4 meals, I'm literally going to add this up for you guys. So I'm pulling out my calculator. I'm going to go, okay, 4 meals times by 7 days of the week, that's 28 meals. Okay, so if you did that 90% of the time, and then of course you were off track about 10%, that's 2.8, the best of 3 meals over the whole week that you might be off track with, and you're actually doing great. But where the trouble comes into that is then where your meals off track become any more than that. And a really key factor of telling that, of course, is to match it up with the amount of exercise sessions that you're doing as well. So if you're just maintaining at the moment, but you're training 5 times a week, you can look back at maybe some of the meals that you're either non-compliant or not hitting, or just aren't being prepared by you, and that could be where you're going wrong. So like I said, the reflections are a really good task to do, to go back and have a look at this. I would say every week, but yeah, don't leave it any longer than the week. But any shorter than that, and you're probably not looking at what you're doing day to day, that could be okay, but you want to look at the week in view. So have a look at that each and every time. And like I said, run it by your coaches, be accountable. You're accountable to yourself first and foremost, but of course we're here to guide you to answer your questions. So please make use of us over the course of that time. Now for the athletes, if you guys want to step it up just a little notch, you could even go next level and create your own spreadsheet where you can, maybe extend those rows a little bit more and give yourself a little bit more space to type in a little bit more detail if that's so important to you. So within your adherence chart, I'd be looking at recording stuff that's of use. So things like perhaps what's the time of meal, what time you had that meal, so what time you started and also what time you finished the meal. meal to actually gauge how quick it is or how slow it is that you're taking to eat that meal, what it is that you ate in a specific amount of detail. So exactly, what protein did you choose, what carbohydrate, what veggies and salad, or, whether it was spaghetti bolognese, homemade, or it was a grilled burger out, and be more as specific as you like. It was a simply grilled Simon Says burger from Grilled. You can go as much detail as what you would need. And then the other really important thing is to not only just jot down the time that you eat, maybe where you ate that, what company you were with, and what were you feeling or doing or thinking at the time. So remember that whole mindfulness that we discussed is really important. So when you're starting to jot down those thoughts, what's happening, you're becoming really connected with that time. And you can probably see over time that, like I said about those habits that might creep in, that we go, why is that happening? Why is that continuing to happen? It is really derailing me from where my values sit and what I align with and what my goals are. Then what is happening at those moments in a lot more detail that we can then go back and have a look and assess and try and either, number one, just recognize the behavior is just the simple thing. But number two, actually recognize the reasons why we're doing that and possibly finding some other tools and solutions to counteract that with as well. And for you guys, the athletes that have taken on board the 888 results pack, looking at having a one-on-one with a sports dietitian over the course of your challenge fortnightly, this is the stuff that we discuss. This is the stuff that we really get in the nitty-gritty of. We help you out with because it's really individual and specific to you. So definitely writing that sort of information down is very helpful for those sessions, so you can maximize the time spent with someone that has a trained eye for this sort of thing and is able to give you advice to get the best outcome for you over the course of your challenge. So yeah, the other thing you might want to say is, your physical sensations. So for some of you, maybe increasing your fiber content might mean that your guts are really bloated and full and gurgling. That sort of stuff's really important to note. Even I've had people even write, how formed their stool is, if that floats your boat. We talk about everything going in and coming out, and obviously digestion and gut health is a really key factor with everything. So that sort of stuff is, call us mad, but we love that info. And yeah, so just physical sensations, like what do you feel like when you're training? If you happen to have some orange juice in your breakfast just before you trained and it repeated on you, like stuff like that's really important. Sleep is also another big factor, I think, from a recovery sense. So, even recording how many hours of sleep you're getting per night, looking at a sleep hygiene routine in and around what you're doing is really going to be conducive to getting the maximal results for you guys as well. So that's all I wanted to cover within today's recording. So please, guys, you do have a bit of homework. You are going to do that hunger game sooner rather than later, and you're also going to need to print out this nutrition adherence chart and start getting some really great data on you to move forward with. Thanks, guys.